Good morning and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sierra Marie and today we are going to experience life, learn, and grow together. I wanted to do an updated culture shocks video. So the first one that I did was before I moved from America to Europe. So it was things that we were told by people that we knew here in Romania. So it's kind of like a preconceived culture shocks. And the second one I did was after a few weeks of moving here to Europe. So I have had a lot of comments on those two videos saying that some things weren't true. After being in Europe for 7 months now, I wanted to sit back down and do an updated video with everything based on my experience. So 3 months ago, we almost got deported and had to leave Romania, and we backpacked around Europe for 3 months to 14 different countries. We experienced so much and saw and was exposed to so many different cultures and different things here in Europe. So I'm excited to do an updated video and see which ones are true to all of Europe versus just Romania. Keep in mind that growing up, I wouldn't say that I was sheltered, but I definitely was not exposed to a lot of things. I grew up in a small town. I lived in the same 10-mile radius my whole life. So I think the biggest culture shock for me is everything is just smaller in Europe. The housing is smaller, the roads are smaller, the cities are smaller, the restaurants are smaller. And it's honestly so cute, especially in the downtown areas. Just going into the little local bars and restaurants is so fun. And even grocery stores are smaller. There are some larger grocery stores that could be comparable to a Walmart or a Costco. But I would say for the most part, most of the grocery stores are smaller stores that would probably be more comparable to an Aldi. Things are just a lot smaller here, and that was definitely shocking to me when I first got here. A huge culture shock for me was the mailing system. So in America, when you order something online, you never speak to the driver really. They will drop it off either at your mailbox or at your doorstep. But here in Romania, you physically have to be home to collect your package. And this was so shocking to me because the first time I ordered something, they called and said that they were on their way to delivery, and I had to go outside and meet the person. I showed them the code on my phone to collect the package, and then he gave it over to me. But they will not leave anything at your door. You physically have to be home to collect it, which I think is just so interesting. I just recently found out that in Europe and Romania specifically, that driving school is mandatory before you can actually get your driver's license. And I was completely mind blown by this because in America, driving school is not mandatory. You basically have 6 months driving with a parent. A parent has to be present in the car. You can't drive by yourself. But then once you turn 16, you take your written test and you take your driver's test, then you get your driver's license. And I just thought that was so interesting because you have to actually go through school here before you can get your driver's test, which honestly makes so much more sense, and I feel like that's how it should be everywhere. One of the biggest culture shocks for me here is just a different communication style. So in America, it is really common to smile at strangers, to talk to strangers. If you're on a walk, you greet people, hi, good morning. Or even at the grocery store to strike up conversation with your cashier, ask how their weekend was, if they did anything fun. Here in Europe, that is definitely not the way things operate. So people here are definitely extremely friendly, and if you need help, they will go out of their way to help you, but you're not gonna see people just smiling on the street. Or if you go into a grocery store, to have small talk conversation is just not very common. I'm not gonna say never. There actually was this situation when I first moved here. still operating in true American style. I was at the gas station and I told the cashier that I liked her nails, and she completely ignored me. She did not respond. And I kind of just stood there in shock because I was like, okay, this is so awkward. Like, I just said something nice to her and she totally ignored me. It is seen as unauthentic or ingenuine to compliment strangers, which I just learned recently and I think is really interesting. Honestly, it makes so much more sense, but that was definitely very shocking to me whenever I first moved here. So 2 culture shocks that were a little bit hard for me to get used to at first is obviously everything here operates in Celsius versus Fahrenheit. So I keep my phone weather in Fahrenheit, but if you're talking to other people or asking for weather details, you're definitely going to get it in Celsius. Another thing is how the dates are written. In Europe, it is written day, month, year, and in America, it's written month, day, year. So that was a little bit hard for me to get used to at first. Checking dates whenever we would buy produce or foods at the grocery store, especially when we first moved here because it was June and July. So I would get really confused, like, oh my gosh, is this expired? And then realizing that the dates are switched. So that was just something funny. One culture shock that honestly gives me anxiety is that the bathroom stalls in most places in Europe are from ceiling to floor. And in America, it is extremely common to have huge gaps in the stalls, and especially like where it locks as well, you'll see gaps. Like, I've sometimes felt uncomfortable in America because I feel like people are staring at you through that little gap. But here in Europe, sometimes I feel like, what happens if you get locked in here or stuck in here? There's no way to get out, which obviously is just an irrational fear, but it's not something that I haven't thought about. A major culture shock for me moving to Europe is definitely how common smoking is. So in America, I would say for the last 10 years, there was a huge movement to get smoking banned. I remember growing up, there were so many commercials about banning smoking and how we were almost there. And then of course, vaping got introduced and that completely blew up and kind of changed the game. But I can remember on my college campus, no smoking signs. You know, it's obviously banned in restaurants and in airports and in most indoor places and most outdoor places. So it's really, really interesting being in Europe, how common it is to just be walking down the street and have smoke blowing in your face, or even eating at outdoor restaurants, you will get smoke in your airways. And even at the Romanian airport, whenever we first got here, they have a smoking lounge and they have a dedicated area and room inside the airport specifically for smoking. So this was definitely something that was extremely shocking for me. Just honestly something that I don't think I can get used to. Okay, a culture shock that I actually love and I feel like was extremely easy for me to adapt to is that taxes are included in the price. So whenever you are shopping or going to a restaurant, the total that you pay is including taxes and sometimes even including tip, which I personally like. I know there have been some comments on my other videos. People don't like that the tip is included, but I honestly think it is nice because you don't have to overthink about it. And then if they went above and beyond, you could always tip a little bit more on the table. But I absolutely love that taxes are included. It makes shopping so easy and you're never second guessing what your total is going to be or if you have enough cash in hand because the total is right there for you. A culture shock that I love is that it is so safe here in Europe. We would see children on public transport or children walking by themselves throughout the city, and I have even walked by myself 45 minutes to an hour and a half to the mall, and never once have I questioned my safety. And it's honestly so refreshing. Go out into public and not feel intimidated or unsafe. So that is definitely a culture shock that I happen to love and will definitely miss in America. A culture shock that kind of makes me sad. In Europe, it is mandatory to have paid time off. So there are laws in place to make sure that employees get paid time off. And in America, sadly, there is no law saying that people have to receive paid time off, which I think is so sad. And it just shows how different the lifestyles are and kind of what is valued. So in Europe, it is more valued to have that work-life balance, and they actually encourage you to take time off and to use all of your paid time off. And in America, I think it's so frowned upon for people to take time off. Knowing that Europe makes it mandatory to have paid time off for employees is such a blessing, and I feel like something that should definitely be implemented in every single country. So a culture shock that is extremely interesting is the public transport and like walking culture. So because America is so spread out and so big, it's not common to see people just walking around. I'm sure in major cities it's a little bit more common. Like where I grew up, it is not common to see people like walking to get coffee or walking to the grocery store, but here it is so common everywhere. So we actually don't have a car here. Our main transportation is by foot. So if we want to go to the mall, we walk 45 minutes to the mall. It has been snowing here recently, the last couple of weeks, and I have been walking to the grocery store in the snow and in the rain. And it's just funny because in America, I literally would not be caught dead walking in the snow to get groceries or to get coffee, but here I do. So it's just so funny how your mindset changes and how different your lifestyle is just between America and Europe. Okay, the last culture shock for today is that I feel like motorcycles are not as common in Europe. So I'm talking about like street bikes or like cruisers like Harleys. You will see like electric scooters, but as far as like street bikes or things like that, I feel like you just don't see those very often here. And in America, it is really common to see people driving street bikes or Harleys down the road or down the highways. So that was something that I thought was really interesting. So I have a lot more culture shocks, but I don't want this video to get too long, so I am going to include those in a part 2. So make sure that you subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss that video. I am always open to feedback and so curious based what your experience is. Let me know in the comments down below which culture shocks you think are true based on your experience. Like I said, I have been exposed to so much since being here in Europe, and it is so nice and refreshing to learn and grow in so many different ways. So thank you so much for being here today, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video. Bye.